For the most part, you're going to use it more on a day-to-day basis, or planning repairs, or coordinating vendors for the repair work, right? And so you can use this for all these other elements as well in more of the operation side, but then at the same time have that available if you ever needed it from the legal side.
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm Show with Bob Preston. Bob is the president, owner, and broker of North County Property Group, the fastest growing and top-ranked property management company in North County, San Diego. This podcast is for property owners and investors who are considering hiring a professional property management company to manage their property assets. You'll hear from leading professionals on the best practices surrounding the San Diego rental market, what's involved in successfully renting your property, and how to make sure your property is managed correctly. Now, here is your host, Bob Preston.
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm podcast. I'm Bob Preston, your host of the show, broadcasting from our studio at North County Property Group in Del Mar, California. Today on the show, we will be discussing an extremely important topic for anyone handling a rental property, and that is the home, I'm going to call it inspection process. It's more of a tenant walkthrough at move in or move out to document property condition. And that inspection, like I said, could be done at move in, move out. It could be done at a midpoint of a lease to check on the property condition. And I have with me today by telephone from Davis, California, Andy Wallace of a company called zInspector, which is a cloud-based app for doing home inspections from a mobile device. Thank you for joining us, Andy.
Hey, Bob, thanks so much for having me here today.
I did a quick introduction there of your company. I'm sure I didn't do it justice. So why don't we start by you telling us briefly about yourself, your background, and what zInspector is all about.
Sure. So, I actually started in property management in a college town and found myself in our team in 3 days would be turning over 100 homes. And so we're in 3 days, we're taking 10 to 20,000 pictures. And then we got to return all the security deposits back in 21 days. And we were fighting with all the, things that many people are still fighting with is, pictures that were unsorted. We couldn't find them. We had these different paper inspection reports and things weren't being filled out properly. It was hard to get them back into the office or even scanned and attached to the file and so forth to the property. Paper
documentation that's stored in disparate places,
Absolutely. And we had, people wouldn't, take the photos and back them up and put them on the server or any of those things. And really that's where zInspector was born. And so we started about 5 years ago to kind of really solve that problem, but it's evolved a lot since then. So it's really now a complete inspection solution is field management work and everything else associated. So it's a big aspect of property management, all that field work, and trying to get that and make that all available, searchable, and accessible, at your home or office.
Document. I love it. So historically over the years, there have been probably some very traditional, before the digital age, maybe some traditional ways of capturing this information. You just rattle off some examples. But for the typical homeowner, investor, who maybe is a do-it-yourself landlord, how are they doing this today? How are they capturing this information? I mean, are there sticky notes, notepads, Excel spreadsheets? What are they doing from your point of view?
So the vast majority of customers that we get signing up are still doing some type of paper process. So they have some type of paper checklist that they're printing out. They may have tried to do even other things like an Excel document or maybe some online form or something like that. But really, there's just too many practical limitations when you're really trying to fill those out. So most people now are still doing these types of inspections by paper. Okay. And so, so what we're trying to do is, a little different because there are some other software out there that do some things that at least appear similar when you first look at them. But what a big part of what we're trying to do is give you a feel and process that does certain things, like when you're filling out a paper form. One thing that's nice about that is you've got this whole perspective, right, on a whole sheet of paper, so you can kind of see everything at once. And so we're trying to give that feeling, even if you're filling it out on a small, like, cell phone type device. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit different, but then we're getting all the real subtle little advantages. And now when you really put it in software, and so like I think the most straightforward one that we really focus on right from the beginning, like essentially all the paper forms, like you have like a 5-bedroom template, and you cross out bedrooms that don't apply, and sometimes you end up with a 6-bedroom property, and then you have to scribble it in, and all those things are a mess. Or even more subtle features, like I remember one of my agents, it was a 6-bedroom property, and it just said bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, so forth to 6, and there was a damage to the window in one of the bedrooms, and the different tenants were disputing which bedroom it was. And so we had no way on the form of even just saying it was just bedroom 1 through 6. What did that really mean, right? Well, now
you probably had to go back to the property and look again, which is inefficient.
Right. And then it's even not, if it's not timestamped, so if you go look at it later, well, then can you really even say it was damage at that moment, right? So it's kind of these subtle things like that now software can really take care of for you automatically, right? So now how it will work is, you're taking a picture of the hallway bedroom flooring. Then 5 years later, different mobile device, you take a picture of the hallway bedroom flooring. You can get one report all side by side. We're going to grab the photos all down at that level and all match them up all automatically. And so we have these tools now that, one, it'll make your process faster. And then, more important, if not, just as important, is that it'll make it so it's more easily referenced in the future.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about the context of what we're talking about here today. I refer to it as a property inspection. That's what our forms say. But this is not what you would get from a professional property inspector who's licensed by the state of California that you might use, for example, when you're purchasing a property. I mean, those guys crawl in attics. They check to make sure that there's no Freon leaking from your AC, right? I mean, these kind of things. And that's not what we're talking about here, right? I mean, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, and we definitely have, some customers that are home inspectors and insurance people and so forth. But you're right. The classic kind of term for home inspection is not in the same category necessarily of what you're doing for a move-in or move-out. You really are just looking at different things. And similarly, a home inspector is not really looking at those things either, So they, home inspector might say, hey, there's a small hairline crack or something like that. And they're going to, that could be a potential foundation problem or something like that.
Flaws in the property is what those guys are looking for, which wouldn't be tenant damage. So
Exactly. There are going to be things that you might use to renegotiate a contract or something like that. But yeah, you would never charge those things to the tenant anyways, right? So
what we're talking about is a property management walkthrough. We call it an inspection to determine what the property condition is when the tenant moves in, and then again when they move out, so we can detect any damages or any things at the house that might be because the tenant that the tenant may have damaged or happened during their tenancy.
Yeah, and that's definitely a big part of it. However, you want the same process to also be used to capture any maintenance items. So there are things that you're just going to need to do over time, and so you want to use the same process for assessing it, whether it is tenant damage or really just assessing what repairs that need to be done or upgrades, or those are all different things. So so that's also part of it.
Right. Okay. So full disclosure here, we've become at North County Property Group a member or a customer and user of zInspector. We just got started. I know enough to be dangerous. So pretty much today, I'm going to let you do all the talking. I'm going to ask some questions with that in mind. And so I kind of want to set that stage as well. All right. So I guess, from your perspective, are there any best practices when you're using zInspector that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes, so there are a number of different things. We try to set things up out of the box. So for the most part, you can create a property pretty easily on the website or mobile app and then have that available for inspection. One thing you are going to do, we do a little differently. You're going to build up this property with a list of areas, and then you're going to want to customize what we call the area details. So in like the simplest example, if you need, let's say, a smoke detector in your bedroom, you're going to, just in one spot, you just say, hey, whenever I'm inspecting a bedroom, you just add in smoke detector. So you just change that in one spot, and then that's going to sync and update all your properties. And it's designed to even change over time. So I know a lot of states right now still don't require CO detectors in the hallway. So right now, you just may have smoke detector in the hallway. But then as that law will most likely change, then you're going to put CO detector in the hallway. We see a lot of people right now, a lot of states are starting to change the 10-year battery requirement. So they add that as a line item, and then just it updates everything. And so it's designed that if you need to dynamically up things over time, you can, and it doesn't hurt your old property inspection results as well. So that's one thing you will need to just kind of take a look at. It's very easy to do, quickly modify it, and then that's going to kind of sync across the board. So that's just kind of setting things up.
Love it.
Now, there are, just want to step back kind of a little bit, is that, when you pull up our app, we have what's called property management inspection mode, and it's its own, inspection mode compared to some of the other ones we have. And it's, geared for move-ins and move-outs. You can certainly use it for annual inspections and things like that. And then we also have a little short inspection. It's designed to be shorter. It's called pre-inspection. And it's interesting, different states, that term means different things. Some people take pre-inspection and they really call that's a pre-inspection before a tenant moves in. How we define pre-inspection in the app is really a few weeks before a tenant moves out. And that's a requirement, at least in California.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. That you at least
14 days. It's meant to be 14 days before. No sooner than 14 days before move out.
Exactly, and I think it's and probably more specifically, I think the requirement is you actually just have to give your tenant the option. Right. But the reality in court, small claims court, a lot of judges now, the first thing they ask is, "Did you do a pre-inspection?" And that's how they ask it, So it is very important to do that. But what we believe, it's useful, even if it's not a requirement in your state. I think everyone should do one, and it just helps with the turn process, because at the end of the day, we always want to make your turnover process as quick as you can. And so the idea is you do that pre-inspection, and it really serves two purposes. One, you can kind of educate the tenant, and if there's things that they could fix and so forth, you just communicate to that. Then, like, so the simple example is you see a broken screen. Well, a tenant can go get that rescreened for $10 to $15, but if you hire someone to go do it, they're going to charge $60 to $90 really for the trip charge. So that little simple thing, it's actually a way to engage with your tenants and help them through the process. And then the other part of it is, if you are going to be planning, upgrades or improvements or painting or flooring or anything that may be, now you are doing that before the tenant moves out, and so you are kind of a step ahead. You basically already have your painter ready to go 2-3 weeks before the tenant's even moved out, and that's really how you want to schedule things to speed up that turnover process.
So at North County Property Group, we're a professional property management company. We manage hundreds of properties. But an individual do-it-yourself landlord could also use zInspector, right? In fact, I think kind of the single user account is free from what I remember.
Absolutely. So we let people use our software for 5 units for free, and just kind of keep in mind we kind of preload it with a few sample properties, so you have some sample data on there. Just delete those on the website, and then you can use it for 5 units for free. And the idea is, whether if you got a home or maybe a vacation home or something like that, you could certainly do your inspections with that. But then as you grow, it tends to be geared more towards businesses, and so that's most of our our paying customers are essentially business owners.
Mm-hmm. One of my property management mentors in this business is a guy that I speak to regularly, and he once told me, document and record the property condition today, like you're going to be in court tomorrow. So in other words, be thorough, be complete, methodical, whatever you need to do, capture it. And, I don't like the thought of going to court, but that aside, certainly we want to be fair, right? So there's a part of being methodical and complete and thorough that goes to fairness to the tenant and also the owner. So we're this sort of person in between the two that are doing this on behalf of the owner, and it's one of our fiduciary responsibilities to be fair to everybody. I think that's a fair way to say it. Yes,
absolutely. And so I think that the best way not to go to court, like you're saying there, is to have all the information ready. And you just tend not to have to go. And I do also really believe with this process, you want to be fair. And so, and sometimes you may, if you had a property and a tenant was there for a few years or and so forth, if you don't have all that real documentation about what it was when they moved in, and maybe even some documentation over time where you did some interim inspections and things like that, you really kind of start to lose sight of what it might have been a tenant damage or what was normal wear and tear and so forth. So definitely you want to be fair to the tenant in all aspects. One, that's what a judge expects, but it's really just more importantly how it is to approach business. That's all rental properties really are a business, and you think of it that way, and you want to treat customers fairly.
Terrific. What would that final output look like? Okay, so if I was going to show it to a tenant or show it to a judge and try to communicate property condition before and after, what would the output look like that you would have?
So there's a few different elements into zInspector, but by default, you're going to get a PDF report in your email that is printable. And it's the idea is that at the end of the day, if I still want to, you can get a report, you can print it. There's only 6 pictures per page, so they're viewable as they are on that document. They're time-stamped, GPS stamped right on the document. So if you print it, you've got the documentation that you need. And so you've got this kind of standalone report. So that's kind of an important element of it. And so you might be looking at other software out there, and they've got these little thumbnails and things like that, and then you have to click to open them and things like that. Be careful of anything like that, because you're going to want a report that you can clearly print if you need to, even though 99 times out of 100 you're not going to need to print it.
Sure.
And so, but then what we do also that's different is that you can go onto the website, and then we have these searching tools. So we have customers that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of photos on their account. And the idea is they can quickly drill down in seconds to any photo that they needed. So they can, search by inspection type, by date, by property address, by, put in keywords like flooring or window or anything like that. And then the documentation that matches that particular search will quickly come up. So the idea is not only do you have this kind of printable report, but now you've got this cloud-based tool that you can really search through anything and find out what you need over time.
So if a tenant or maybe even a judge said, hey, thanks for the report. I can't quite make out the detail in this photo. Can you bring me, a higher res, or can you send me a higher res image? We can certainly do that, and you've got all the photos. I mean, right now when we get back from our inspections, or before we started using your product anyway, and we would literally, from our iPhone or the camera, have to take the time to upload every single photo into our file server for that particular property file. I mean, very time consuming.
It really is. And then there's a lot of subtleties with the software that make that important. Like you can control it. So like for instance, you can make it so it doesn't upload on mobile data. You can control the settings. So if it's uploaded to the website, it will automatically purge them from your device to not bog down your device's memory, things like that. So those are all the little subtleties that it's designed to let people use their personal devices, but it gets all that stuff off of it and onto the website in a report back in your email.
All right. So from a digital imaging standpoint or point of view, you sync with other digital devices for capturing those images. What devices do you recommend, or are there any ones in particular that you think work better?
So, basically all Android or iPhone, iOS devices can work. I think there's pluses and minuses. That's really more of a, Android Apple decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for my own, personal phone.
So you take the photos right, I guess, within the app from your phone instead of using a different camera.
That's the primary method. So you can. It really doesn't matter on what type of device that you use. Now there are a couple things to kind of keep in mind. Now we also often get this question asked, and the device we actually recommend, even though I use an Android phone, I actually recommend an iPad mini. And there's even talk about that may go away or something like that. But I find like an iPad mini 4, it's a device that works really well. It's got a big battery. It's small enough you can, a man can put it in their back pocket and a woman could easily put it in her purse. And so it's just easy to carry around and it lasts a long time. So it really, and you can get them, for, under $300. And so it is a nice device to use. So we really recommend that.
A little bit bigger and easier to navigate, I think, in a mini. I believe that too.
Now, there are some little subtleties with it, though. Like, for example, the Mini, at least on most generations, I don't think even the current ones, but they don't have a flash on the camera, so which can be problematic. And so zInspector is actually designed so you could actually be doing your main inspection mode and what we call property management inspection. So you're doing your condition codes and marking things as new, satisfactory, and comments and do all that. And then you can pull up your phone in what's called photo inspection mode and take additional pictures or videos or things like that from the app, and the server will now automatically know to merge them and all put that as part of one report. And that's a key thing, so because sometimes even if your battery dies, you can just pull up your phone or tablet or vice versa. So we try and make that entire process just seamless, and the server just handles that for you.
We had a property inspection walkthrough one time, and the tenant had turned off the power. So even though we were doing it in the daytime, the lights didn't work. Man, that was a tough one. So I get what you're saying. All right, I've heard of these little 360-degree video cameras that spin around, or we just got one too to use with your software. Tell us about that and how those work with zInspector.
So it is a feature that we gear more to our business customers, but it really is powerful. It gives you, basically, you take these 360 cameras and they have a spherical lens on both sides. So you basically put it in the middle of the room, you walk into the hallway so you're out of the picture, and then on the app, you'll just hit like the master bedroom button. And it captures the entire room in one click. And then we handle all the things in terms of pulling that image off of that camera, putting it onto the mobile device, uploading it to the website, embedding it in your report. And then what you're left with is a report that you'll see that kind of this 360 image is kind of like rolled out and looks a little, distorted on the standard paper. But then when you click the link, you can literally spin all the way around, go all the way down to the floor, all the way up in the ceiling.
You zoom in and zoom out so you can get a pretty detailed.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, and it just gives you all of that perspective, because sometimes if you're, a big thing, even when you're taking pictures, someone will have a little hole in the wall and they'll just take a picture. And then when you look back at the picture, you can't tell, is that hole, dime size, quarter size, or is it a fist, and so this now you can use this to help you with all that perspective. And then your reports are all any mixture you want of pictures, videos. You can also do video clips with the app, and then these 360 images, and that's all now mixed together based on what was most appropriate for you at the time.
Even though you've got the video, it's still a good practice to capture some stills. For example, maybe a close-up of if you notice some damage or notice something that you want to be able to refer to later, probably capture a up-close picture of it as well.
Absolutely, because if you definitely notice damage, you want to take a picture there as well, and that way you've got a firm reference. It's easily printable, and you're already done. You don't want to have to. The idea is when you are done with the inspection, you're essentially done. You don't want to have to go hunt for it later and figure that out. So, but the videos are useful, So sometimes you might that also is another tool to give you perspective.
Also, if the place, I mean, heaven forbid, is trashed, it gives a really good perspective of, okay, we're not talking about small damages here. We're talking about sort of a major malicious type event.
Absolutely.
We bought the Ricoh Theta 4K, and that's not a plug for that product, but it's very high-res stuff, and so we're thrilled to start to use it. We've just kind of been goofing around with it at this point. So like I said, I know enough to be dangerous. Let's talk about another feature. Does the app timestamp your inspection so that you have it documented what day you were there, what time, maybe who did the inspection?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big part of, how we started from the beginning when we, initially we were just taking pictures. Everything is time stamped, user stamped, and GPS stamped. And that will all show up on your reports. You can turn it on or off if you need to make it like a cleaner looking report for certain reasons. But for the most part, people are all going to have that on there. And it really gives insight into things. And so, this is a real example in court that, I had to go to one time. And one of the agents took a picture. You could see all the grime all over the refrigerator. Okay. And in this photo, the refrigerator clearly looks stainless. But you could still see all the grime kind of just dirty all over the front. And basically in court, the tenant's primary thing in court was they wanted all the photos thrown out because her refrigerator was actually black. And the issue was that when the agent took the picture, the flash came back from the black refrigerator and it looked stainless in the flash. And so it was very easy to, tell the judge to look at the report with the time stamps, GPS stamps, 10 seconds apart. There was a picture showing the whole room and then showing the refrigerator was black. So the idea was we got that level of detail without doing any extra work. And that's what we're trying to do, because when you really get down into court, kind of some very subtle things can make the difference between winning and losing and so forth. So we're trying to capture as much information we can so you have that available.
So like you said, 99 times out of 100, you don't ever go to court. But boy, if and when it happens, and it may be for our property owners out there, an eventuality, man, it's nice to be prepared so you don't have a lot of back and forth, and it can be you can go in front of a judge confidently and flip them the zInspector report, right? I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the system.
And that's a big part of it. And I think you're right. For the most part, that is the kind of, I would say it's almost analogous to insurance, right? Just, doing this work all the time to be, protect yourself. For the most part, you're going to use it more on a day-to-day basis, or planning repairs, or coordinating vendors for the repair work, right? And so you can use this for all these other elements as well in more of the operation side, but then at the same time have that available if you ever needed it from a legal side.
Okay, terrific. Are there other uses for zInspector? So, for example, my business development manager was kind of watching us the other day, and he's like, oh my gosh, I have to come back and tell the team what this property is like before we've even captured our listing photos, and I have to describe this from my memory, or maybe he's taken some photos, briefly when he's doing the signing of the property management agreement. I mean, do you hear of people doing that, like just kind of plopping down the camera, opening up zInspector, and even before you move a tenant in, maybe taking some some notes? Maybe it's that pre-inspection app even, or is there a like onboarding section in the app?
Yeah, and there's actually a couple of different modes depending on how you want to operate. But one that it's a very simple one, really, in practice, but it ends up being incredibly powerful. We just call it photo inspection, and so we make it very informal. You just tap photo inspection, you pick the property, you pick the general, we call activity, why you are there, so marketing or leasing, or maybe post a notice on the door. And now you can just take pictures, videos, or 360 images. And so just by getting in there in a few seconds, now that picture is all part of the account. And that's useful in a lot of different ways. One, it's all searchable, but let's say it can be anything from, hey, example you gave, you took marketing pictures, or maybe, you happen to be walking through the property mid-lease for a maintenance issue and you saw a picture of a dog bowl or something that it wasn't on the lease. Now you've got a GPS timestamp photo of that dog bowl there. And those little subtleties may come up if there is a bunch of pet damage on the carpet, that they said they never had a dog, but you had a picture of a dog bowl, and it's still going to be dated on the report a few months earlier, but you can actually add it to that move-out inspection and that it happened when it did. So it's just like another example. By capturing this data, it just makes it available later for when you need it.
Occasionally we'll have, I don't want to call it a dispute, but a conversation with an owner that when we turn the property back over to them, they'll say something along the lines of, hey, the house wasn't like this when I turned it over to you guys, so you're responsible to get this corrected. And we go back and look at the photos we've captured, and we'll go, well, yeah, it was like this. And I think this would help us prepare for that too. So what the property condition is like when we onboard the property, even before a renter moves in, I think is a really important thing for property managers and specifically to capture.
Absolutely. And I have a great example of that. The owner was going to sell a property and was convinced that there was closet doors on the property and on one of the bedrooms, was just convinced. And because we had that documentation, it was pretty easy to prove that, no, it was actually their own child who took them off before we started managing it, so, but it's like, so getting that level of information and just being ready for it when you need it, you got this reference that you can go back.
Andy, this has been a terrific conversation today. In the interest of time, we're going to wrap up here. Any closing comments or thoughts about zInspector or what investors and homeowners should be looking at when they're doing their inspections?
So we try and make the basics very easy, but the idea is really to just go in and take pictures. And as simple as that sounds, we still will talk to people and say, oh, I don't want that level of documentation and things like that. And we really think the opposite. Your mindset should be the opposite. Document it. If you see a problem, get it fixed. If you need to disclose something to tenant, share it with them. Or if you're managing property, disclose it to the owner. And we think really having good records, good documentation, full disclosure, that's the way to really kind of run a business, interact with your tenants, and I think just makes the whole process better overall.
Great advice and well taken. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or the team at zInspector, how would they do that?
Let's just go to our website at zInspector.com, letter zInspector.com. You can go there. You can create an account for free without even a credit card. You can use the software for free. There's a ton of videos on there on how to get going. If you're more of a property manager and more of the business accounts, all the pricing options are all there. And if you need anything else, just let us know.
Yeah, you do have a lot of great videos. I've done it. I've signed up, and I'm not, I'm pretty technical, but when I start doing something like that, I want it to happen quickly when it's me, and it was super easy, super fast. And like I said, we're kind of just getting started, but I've seen Andy around a lot and I recommend these guys highly. So y'all out there, listen to this man and check out his product. Thank you, Andy, so much for taking time to join the show today. And that's going to conclude today's episode. If you like what you heard today, you like the podcast, and you follow us, we'd very much appreciate it if you would pay it forward, review us on iTunes, on Google, or whatever platform you happen to be listening. And I want to thank you all for joining the Property Management Brainstorm podcast. Until next time, we'll be in the field working hard for our clients to maximize their property value and rental income and maintain top tenant relations. And we'll see you next time.